Have you ever noticed how some people leave you exhausted, not because they hurt you openly, but because they quietly drain your peace? You try to explain yourself, you try to fix the relationship, you try to stay kind, patient, understanding, yet the more effort you give, the heavier your heart becomes. Buddhism teaches that suffering does not always come from loss. Sometimes, suffering comes from holding on too tightly to what is no longer aligned with your inner peace. This message is not about hatred, revenge, or cutting people off with anger. It is about learning the sacred art of detachment and trusting the universe to deal with what you no longer need to carry. 1. Understand that attachment is the root of emotional suffering. Buddhism teaches that attachment is one of the deepest causes of emotional pain because it quietly ties your inner peace to things you cannot control. Attachment binds the mind and creates invisible chains around the heart, making your happiness dependent on people, situations, and outcomes behaving exactly the way you want them to. When you become emotionally attached to how someone should treat you, how they should understand you, or how they should care, you unknowingly give them power over your emotional state. Their words begin to affect your mood, their actions begin to disturb your sleep, their silence begins to create noise inside your mind. This is how suffering slowly enters your life without you even noticing it. Attachment does not always look dramatic. Often, it appears as hope that someone will change, expectation that they will one day understand you, or belief that your peace depends on their behavior. You may keep replaying conversations in your mind, wondering why they acted the way they did, or imagining how things could have gone differently. Buddhism teaches that the mind suffers not because something bad happened, but because it keeps holding on to what should have happened. This constant holding, expecting, and resisting reality is what creates inner tension. Detachment does not mean you stop caring, loving, or feeling compassion. Buddhism never teaches emotional coldness. Detachment simply means you stop needing others to act a certain way for you to feel complete inside. It means you allow people to be who they are without letting their choices define your self-worth or disturb your inner balance. When you detach, you still care, but you no longer cling. You no longer beg for understanding. You no longer chase emotional validation. You stand rooted in your own awareness. The moment you release attachment to expectations, the grip of suffering begins to loosen naturally. Your mind feels lighter because it is no longer fighting reality. Your heart feels calmer because it is no longer waiting for someone else to fix it. You begin to understand that peace does not come from being treated perfectly, understood fully, or loved exactly the way you imagine. Peace comes from accepting what is, letting go of what you cannot control, and returning your attention to your own inner state. Buddhism teaches that true freedom begins when you stop tying your happiness to people's behavior. When you understand this, you no longer feel easily shaken by words, reactions, or silence. You realize that your peace has always lived within you, waiting for you to stop handing it away through attachment. 2. Detachment is not abandonment, it is self-respect. Many people struggle with detachment because they believe it means abandoning others, becoming cold, or turning away from love. Buddhism teaches something very different. Detachment is not about rejecting people or cutting them off with anger. It is about recognizing your own worth and choosing not to sacrifice your inner peace for relationships that continually drain you. When you stay emotionally attached to people who do not respect your boundaries, your kindness slowly turns into self-neglect. Detachment is the moment you realize that protecting your peace is not selfish, it is necessary. Often, we stay attached because we feel guilty. We fear being seen as heartless, ungrateful, or disloyal. Buddhism teaches that guilt is another form of attachment, an emotional chain that keeps you trapped in situations that no longer feel right. Detachment asks you to look honestly at how someone makes you feel over time. Do you feel calm, respected, and understood? Or do you feel anxious, small, and emotionally exhausted? Self-respect begins when you stop ignoring these signals from your inner world. Detachment does not require loud exits, explanations, or dramatic goodbyes. Sometimes it is a quiet inner decision. You stop oversharing. You stop explaining yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop chasing the same emotional conversations that lead nowhere. Buddhism teaches that wisdom often expresses itself through simplicity. You step back gently, without hatred, without blame, and without the need to prove anything. This quiet distance is not abandonment, it is clarity. When you practice detachment with self-respect, you stop measuring your value by how much you are needed or approved of. You understand that love does not require self-betrayal. You can wish someone well and still choose not to remain emotionally available to them. You can forgive and still keep your distance. Buddhism reminds us that compassion includes compassion for yourself. If a connection consistently disturbs your inner balance, letting go is not cruelty, it is wisdom. Over time, detachment strengthens your sense of inner dignity. You no longer beg for attention, understanding, or effort. You stop shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable. Instead, you stand peacefully in your own awareness, knowing that your peace matters. This is the true meaning of self-respect in Buddhism. You do not abandon others, you simply stop abandoning yourself. 3. Stop trying to control outcomes that are not yours to manage. Buddhism teaches that much of our suffering comes from the mind's constant attempt to control life. We try to control how people think, how they feel, how they respond, and how situations should unfold. When things do not go according to our expectations, the mind becomes restless and heavy. You replay events again and again, imagining different endings, different words you should have said, or different reactions you wish others had shown. This endless mental struggle does not change the outcome, but it deeply disturbs your peace. The desire to control often comes from fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being treated unfairly, fear of losing people or losing meaning. Buddhism teaches that control is an illusion because life is constantly changing. People act from their own conditioning, wounds, and awareness, not from your intentions. When you try to manage outcomes that are beyond your control, you place an unnecessary burden on your heart. You carry responsibility for lessons that were never yours to teach. Detachment begins when you recognize the boundary between what is yours and what is not. Your actions, your words, your intentions, and your awareness belong to you. Other people's reactions, choices, and realizations do not. When you accept this truth, the mind begins to soften. You stop forcing conversations. You stop chasing clarity from those who are not ready to give it. You stop exhausting yourself by trying to fix what only time, experience, or inner awakening can fix. Buddhism teaches that surrender is not weakness, it is wisdom. When you let go of the need to control outcomes, you allow life to unfold naturally. This does not mean you stop caring or acting responsibly. It means you act with sincerity and then release attachment to the result. You trust that whatever needs to happen will happen in its own time, guided by causes and conditions far beyond your limited view. As you practice this kind of detachment, a deep sense of relief arises within you. Your mind becomes quieter because it is no longer fighting reality. Your heart becomes lighter because it is no longer carrying the weight of other people's journeys. You begin to trust life instead of resisting it. In this trust, peace slowly returns, and you learn to move through the world with calm acceptance rather than constant emotional struggle. 4. Silence is often the most powerful form of detachment. Buddhism teaches that not every situation requires a response, and not every misunderstanding needs an explanation. The mind often believes that speaking more, defending yourself, or reacting immediately will bring relief. In reality, constant reacting keeps you emotionally entangled. Silence, when chosen with awareness, is not avoidance or weakness. It is a conscious form of detachment that protects your inner peace and preserves your energy. Many people feel the urge to explain themselves repeatedly, especially when they feel misunderstood or judged. They want to be seen correctly, heard fully, and validated emotionally. Buddhism teaches that when someone is not open to understanding you, no amount of explanation will change their perception. Continuing to speak in such moments only deepens frustration and strengthens attachment. Silence breaks this cycle. It allows you to step out of the emotional struggle instead of feeding it. Silence also teaches patience and self-trust. When you choose not to react, you give yourself space to observe your emotions without being controlled by them. Anger, hurt, and disappointment may still arise, but they are no longer given a voice that can harm you. Buddhism teaches that emotions pass like clouds when they are not constantly reinforced by reaction. Silence gives them room to dissolve naturally. Detachment through silence does not mean suppressing your truth. It means choosing the right time and place for expression. You learn to ask yourself whether speaking will bring peace or simply create more noise. When words are spoken from agitation, they often lead to regret. When silence is chosen from clarity, it leads to inner stability. Buddhism values right speech, which includes knowing when not to speak. As you practice silence, something powerful begins to happen. You stop chasing closure from people who cannot give it. You stop engaging in emotional battles that leave you drained. You allow the universe to reveal truth without your interference. Often, silence allows others to see their own actions more clearly, while you remain untouched by the outcome. Over time, silence strengthens your detachment and deepens your awareness. You realize that your peace does not depend on winning arguments or being understood by everyone. It depends on staying connected to your inner calm. Buddhism teaches that the quiet mind sees clearly and the silent heart remains free. In choosing silence, you choose yourself, and that choice is one of the most powerful forms of detachment you can practice. 5. Trust that karma handles what you release. Buddhism teaches that the universe operates on a natural law of balance, often called karma. Karma does not mean punishment or reward in the way people commonly imagine. It simply means that every action, intention, and choice creates an effect, whether seen immediately or revealed over time. When you understand this deeply, you stop feeling responsible for correcting people, teaching them lessons, or making them realize the pain they caused you. You begin to trust that life itself is the greatest teacher, far more precise and patient than human emotion ever could be. Many people struggle to detach because they fear injustice. They ask themselves, what if they never realize what they did to me? Or, what if they get away with hurting me? Buddhism teaches that this fear keeps you emotionally bound to the very person or situation you are trying to escape. As long as you wait for fairness, apology, or regret from someone else, your peace remains delayed. Detachment begins when you understand that karma does not miss anything. It does not rush, but it does not forget. When you release someone without resentment, you are not letting them win, you are choosing freedom over emotional imprisonment. Buddhism teaches that holding on to anger, revenge, or the need for closure keeps karmic ties alive. The more you replay the hurt, the more energy you send back into the connection. Detachment breaks this cycle. When you step away with calm acceptance, the energetic bond weakens. You stop feeding the past with your attention, and karma is allowed to unfold naturally without interference. Trusting karma requires patience and maturity. It means accepting that you may never witness the outcome. You may never see the moment someone realizes their mistakes. You may never hear the apology you once hoped for. Buddhism teaches that this is not a loss. It is liberation. The goal of detachment is not to watch karma work. The goal is to stop being affected by what others do. Your peace does not depend on their awakening. Karma also works inwardly. When someone acts with selfishness, dishonesty, or cruelty, they carry the weight of those actions within their own mind. Even if their life appears peaceful on the surface, inner unrest often follows them quietly. Buddhism teaches that the greatest suffering is not external consequences, but the inner state created by unwholesome actions. You do not need to expose, confront, or punish. Life will reflect their inner world back to them in ways you cannot control or predict. Detachment allows you to return your focus to your own karma. Instead of obsessing over what others deserve, you begin to ask, what kind of energy am I creating right now? Buddhism teaches that when you choose calm over conflict, compassion over bitterness, and awareness over reaction, you plant seeds of peace in your own life. These seeds grow silently. Over time, they shape your experiences, relationships, and inner stability in ways far more meaningful than temporary satisfaction from revenge ever could. Trusting karma also means releasing the desire to be understood. Many people want others to finally realize how much they suffered. They want acknowledgement. They want validation. Buddhism teaches that craving recognition keeps suffering alive. When you detach, you no longer need others to confirm your pain. You know your truth. You honor your experience quietly. This self-validation is a powerful form of healing. As you deepen your trust in karma, you stop forcing justice through words, actions, or confrontation. You stop defending yourself to people who have already decided how they see you. You allow misunderstandings to exist without trying to correct them. This does not mean you accept mistreatment. It means you no longer engage with it emotionally. You walk away inwardly, even if the outer situation takes time to change. Buddhism teaches that letting go with a pure heart is one of the highest forms of wisdom. When you release someone without hatred, you free yourself from carrying their energy forward into your future. You stop dragging old pain into new moments. Karma works best when the mind is still, not when it is entangled in desire for outcomes. Over time, you will notice a quiet shift within you. Situations that once triggered anger no longer disturb you as deeply. Thoughts of the past lose their emotional charge. You feel lighter, not because life became perfect, but because you stopped fighting what you cannot control. This is karma working in your favor, not through punishment of others, but through the liberation of your own heart. Trusting karma is ultimately an act of faith in life itself. It is the understanding that you do not need to carry every injustice, explain every wound, or resolve every story. Some things are meant to be released, not resolved. When you detach and let the universe handle what you have let go, you reclaim your energy, your clarity, and your peace. And in Buddhism, this inner peace is the greatest victory of all. 6. Detachment creates space for alignment. Buddhism teaches that when something leaves your life, it is not always a loss. Often, it is an opening. The mind, however, fears emptiness. When people drift away, when connections weaken, or when familiar emotional patterns disappear, the mind rushes to fill the space with worry, regret, or self-blame. Buddhism invites you to see this moment differently. Emptiness is not punishment. Emptiness is space, and space is where alignment begins. For a long time, many people live emotionally crowded lives. Their energy is spread thin across relationships that drain them, conversations that go nowhere, and expectations that are never met. Even when these connections bring pain, they feel familiar, and familiarity feels safe to the untrained mind. Buddhism teaches that clinging to what is familiar, even when it causes suffering, keeps you stuck in misalignment. Detachment gently removes what no longer belongs, creating room for what truly resonates with your inner nature. When you detach from people who constantly disturb your peace, you may first feel loneliness. This is natural. The mind confuses absence with emptiness and emptiness with lack. But Buddhism teaches that this phase is temporary. Beneath the surface of loneliness, a deeper calm begins to form. Your thoughts slow down, your emotions stabilize. You begin to hear your own inner voice more clearly, no longer drowned out by external noise. This is the beginning of alignment. Alignment means your outer life starts to reflect your inner state. When you are constantly entangled in emotional drama, your life reflects confusion and restlessness. When you detach and create inner space, your life gradually mirrors clarity and balance. Buddhism teaches that what enters your life is shaped by the condition of your mind. A peaceful mind naturally attracts peaceful experiences, not through force, but through harmony. Detachment also aligns you with your values. Many people compromise themselves to maintain relationships. They silence their truth, tolerate disrespect, or accept emotional imbalance just to avoid conflict or abandonment. Buddhism teaches that every time you betray your inner truth, you move further away from alignment. Detachment restores this connection. As you step back from draining influences, you reconnect with what matters to you: simplicity, respect, honesty, and inner calm. Your actions begin to flow from awareness rather than fear. This space created by detachment is not meant to remain empty forever. Buddhism teaches that life naturally fills space with what is appropriate. When you stop forcing connections, healthier relationships begin to appear. People who respect your boundaries, value your presence, and resonate with your energy enter naturally. Even solitude becomes nourishing rather than painful, because it is chosen rather than imposed. You no longer seek connection to escape loneliness. You choose connection from wholeness. Alignment also occurs within your inner world. When you detach, you stop carrying emotional residue from others into your daily life. You are no longer reacting to past conversations or anticipating future conflicts. The mind becomes present. Buddhism teaches that presence is the doorway to peace. In this presence, you begin to notice simple joys again: silence, breath, nature, and stillness. These were always available, but emotional clutter kept you from experiencing them fully. As alignment deepens, your decisions become clearer. You say no without guilt, and yes without hesitation. You no longer overthink whether you are doing the right thing, because your actions feel grounded. Buddhism teaches that when the mind is aligned, doubt fades. You trust yourself more. You trust life more. You move forward without forcing outcomes or clinging to specific results. Detachment also aligns you with the natural rhythm of change. Buddhism reminds us that everything is impermanent. Relationships, roles, and identities are constantly evolving. When you detach, you stop resisting change. You allow life to rearrange itself. This acceptance reduces suffering and increases wisdom. You understand that what leaves was never meant to stay forever, and what stays will not need to be forced. Over time, you begin to feel a quiet confidence, not the loud confidence that seeks validation, but a calm assurance that comes from being centered. You are no longer desperate for connection, approval, or reassurance. You are aligned with yourself. From this alignment, your life feels lighter, clearer, and more authentic. Buddhism teaches that true fulfillment does not come from holding tightly, but from allowing life to flow through you without obstruction. Detachment removes the obstacles. Alignment follows naturally. When you create space by letting go, you do not lose yourself. You finally return to who you were before emotional noise pulled you away from your center. This return is not dramatic. It is gentle, quiet, and deeply liberating. 7. Choose inner peace over emotional clutter. Buddhism teaches that inner peace is not something you find by chance. It is something you choose again and again, often in quiet moments where no one is watching. Emotional clutter is created when the mind carries too many unresolved attachments, expectations, memories, and reactions. Over time, this clutter fills your inner space, leaving little room for calm, clarity, or joy. Many people live in this state without realizing that they are exhausted, not because life is difficult, but because they are carrying emotional weight that no longer belongs to them. Emotional clutter often comes from holding on to people long after the connection has stopped nourishing you. You keep thinking about what was said, what should have been said, or what might happen next. Even when someone is no longer present in your life, their influence continues inside your mind. Buddhism teaches that the mind does not suffer from events themselves, but from repeatedly revisiting them. Each time you replay a memory with emotion, you add another layer to the clutter within you. Choosing inner peace begins with awareness. You start noticing how certain thoughts disturb your breathing, tighten your chest, or steal your attention from the present moment. Buddhism teaches that the body often recognizes emotional burden before the mind does. When you listen to these signals, you begin to understand what needs to be released. Inner peace is not achieved by fixing every relationship or resolving every misunderstanding. It is achieved by knowing when to stop engaging. Detachment helps you clear emotional clutter by teaching you how to let thoughts arise without attaching to them. Instead of feeding anger, resentment, or longing, you observe these emotions gently and allow them to pass. Buddhism teaches that emotions are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. When you stop giving them constant attention, they lose their power over you. The mind becomes quieter, and peace naturally takes their place. Choosing inner peace also means simplifying your emotional life. You stop explaining yourself to people who are not listening. You stop seeking validation from those who do not value your presence. You stop reacting to every opinion, message, or silence. Buddhism teaches that peace grows when you reduce unnecessary engagement. This simplicity is not emptiness. It is clarity. As emotional clutter clears, you begin to experience life more fully. Ordinary moments feel lighter. Your mind is no longer divided between the present and the past. You sleep more peacefully because your thoughts are no longer racing. You respond to situations instead of reacting impulsively. Buddhism teaches that a peaceful mind sees reality clearly, without distortion caused by emotional baggage. Inner peace also changes how you relate to others. When you are no longer burdened by emotional clutter, you stop projecting your unresolved pain onto people. You listen more deeply. You speak more calmly. You choose your words with awareness. Relationships that remain in your life feel more balanced because they are no longer driven by need or fear. Relationships that leave do so without leaving wounds behind. Choosing peace sometimes means disappointing others. You may stop participating in emotional games, arguments, or patterns that once defined your role in their lives. Buddhism teaches that this discomfort is temporary, but the peace that follows is lasting. When you stop carrying what does not belong to you, your energy returns to you. You feel whole without effort. Over time, inner peace becomes your natural state rather than a temporary feeling. You no longer chase happiness through people or outcomes. You find contentment in stillness, awareness, and acceptance. Buddhism teaches that peace is not the absence of problems, but the absence of inner conflict. When emotional clutter is cleared, problems lose their power to disturb you deeply. Choosing inner peace is ultimately choosing yourself. It is recognizing that your life is too precious to be consumed by unresolved emotions, unnecessary attachments, and constant mental noise. When you make peace your priority, detachment becomes natural. You no longer struggle to let go. You simply understand that peace is worth protecting. And in Buddhism, protecting your inner peace is one of the highest forms of wisdom and self-awareness. 8. Let go quietly and live freely. Buddhism teaches that the deepest form of detachment is not loud, dramatic, or announced. It is quiet. It happens inside you, long before anything changes on the outside. Many people believe that letting go must involve explanations, confrontations, or final conversations that bring closure. Buddhism gently corrects this belief. True letting go does not require permission, understanding, or agreement from anyone else. It is an inner release, a soft untying of emotional knots that allows you to move through life without carrying unnecessary weight. When you let go quietly, you stop needing others to acknowledge your pain or validate your decision. You no longer wait for the perfect moment to explain yourself. You no longer rehearse speeches in your mind, hoping that one day your words will finally make someone understand. Buddhism teaches that the need to be understood is itself a form of attachment. When you release this need, your heart becomes lighter and your mind becomes clearer. Quiet letting go means you stop revisiting old wounds. You stop reopening emotional doors that were meant to close. This does not mean you forget what happened or deny your feelings. It means you no longer live inside those moments. You honor your experience without allowing it to define your present. Buddhism teaches that clinging to the past creates suffering because the past no longer exists except in memory. Each time you return to it emotionally, you bring suffering into the now. Living freely begins when your inner world is no longer crowded with unresolved stories. You notice that your thoughts slow down. You are not constantly checking your phone for messages that may never come. You are not reading between the lines of silence or searching for hidden meanings in words. Buddhism teaches that freedom is the absence of inner resistance. When you stop resisting what has already happened, peace flows naturally. Letting go quietly also changes how you move through the world. You become less reactive. Situations that once triggered anger, sadness, or anxiety no longer disturb you as deeply. This does not mean you become indifferent. It means you become centered. Buddhism teaches that a centered mind responds wisely rather than reacting emotionally. You pause before speaking. You observe before judging. You choose calm over chaos. As you live more freely, you begin to trust yourself again. Many people lose trust in their own judgment after emotional pain. They question their choices, blame themselves, or doubt their worth. Buddhism teaches that self-blame is another form of attachment, one that turns suffering inward. Quiet detachment helps you release this burden. You understand that you acted with the awareness you had at the time. You forgive yourself gently. This forgiveness restores inner balance. Living freely also means releasing the fear of being alone. When emotional attachments fall away, there may be moments of solitude. Buddhism teaches that solitude is not emptiness, it is clarity. In solitude, you reconnect with your breath, your body, and your inner stillness. You rediscover who you are when no one is demanding your energy. This reconnection is essential for true freedom. As detachment deepens, you stop measuring your life by external approval. You no longer chase attention, affection, or reassurance. You begin to enjoy simple things without needing to share them or explain them. Buddhism teaches that contentment arises when the mind is no longer restless. You feel complete without constantly seeking more from others. Quiet letting go also aligns you with compassion. When you are no longer entangled emotionally, you can see others more clearly. You understand that people act from their own conditioning, pain, and limitations. This understanding does not excuse harm, but it frees you from hatred. Buddhism teaches that compassion grows naturally when attachment dissolves. You wish others well without needing them close. Living freely does not mean life becomes perfect. Challenges still arise. People still disappoint you. Situations still change. The difference is that these experiences no longer control your inner state. You move through them with awareness rather than resistance. Buddhism teaches that freedom is not found in controlling life, but in flowing with it. Over time, quiet detachment becomes your natural way of being. You no longer force endings or chase beginnings. You trust the rhythm of life. You allow people to come and go without clinging or fear. You remain rooted in your own presence, calm and steady. In Buddhism, this is the ultimate liberation, not escaping the world, but living fully within it without being bound by it. When you let go quietly, you do not lose love, meaning, or connection. You lose suffering, you gain freedom, and in that freedom, life becomes lighter, clearer, and deeply peaceful. 9. Become untouchable by returning to yourself. Buddhism teaches that the deepest form of detachment is not found in distance from others, but in closeness to yourself. Many people believe they suffer because of what others do to them, but Buddhism gently reveals a deeper truth. Suffering continues only when the mind abandons itself. Each time you place your emotional center in someone else's hands, you become vulnerable to disturbance. Becoming untouchable does not mean becoming cold or isolated. It means returning your attention, trust, and stability back to your own inner awareness. For a long time, people search for safety in relationships, approval, and emotional reassurance. They want to feel seen, valued, and understood. While these desires are human, Buddhism teaches that depending on external sources for inner stability creates fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood. When your sense of peace depends on someone else staying, changing, or behaving kindly, your inner world becomes fragile. Detachment invites you to build your foundation somewhere unshakable within yourself. Returning to yourself begins with noticing how often your mind leaves the present moment to chase emotional comfort. You replay old conversations. You imagine future outcomes. You wait for messages, reactions, or signs. Buddhism teaches that this constant movement away from the present is the root of restlessness. The mind is never at peace because it is never home. Detachment gently brings the mind back, again and again, to what is happening right now, where peace already exists. As you return to yourself, you begin to develop inner witnessing. Instead of being consumed by emotions, you observe them. Sadness arises, and you notice it without becoming it. Anger appears, and you watch it pass without acting on it. Buddhism teaches that emotions lose their power when they are observed rather than identified with. You realize that feelings are experiences, not identities. This understanding creates a quiet strength that nothing external can easily disturb. Becoming untouchable also means releasing the habit of personalization. Many people interpret everything through the lens of self. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A changed tone becomes disrespect. Someone else's behavior becomes a judgment on your worth. Buddhism teaches that most human behavior is shaped by inner struggles, conditioning, and unconscious patterns, not by you. When you stop personalizing everything, emotional suffering decreases. You give people space to be who they are without carrying their inner conflicts as your burden. Returning to yourself also restores your sense of boundaries. You begin to recognize when something feels wrong inside you, and you honor that feeling without needing to justify it. Buddhism teaches that wisdom often speaks quietly through intuition and bodily sensations. A heaviness in the chest, a tightening in the stomach, a sense of restlessness are messages asking for awareness. Detachment teaches you to listen to these signals and respond with care rather than ignoring them to please others. As your connection to yourself deepens, you stop chasing closure from people who cannot give it. You understand that closure is an inner process, not an external event. Buddhism teaches that waiting for someone else to heal your wound keeps the wound open. Healing begins when you accept what happened without needing a final explanation. This acceptance is not approval, it is release. And release brings peace. Becoming untouchable does not mean you stop feeling pain. Pain is part of life. Buddhism teaches that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Suffering arises when pain is resisted, replayed, or attached to. When you return to yourself, pain passes through without creating lasting damage. You feel it fully, then let it go. This ability to feel without clinging is a profound form of freedom. As detachment matures, you notice a shift in how you relate to others. You no longer approach relationships from need, fear, or emptiness. You approach them from fullness. You share because you want to, not because you are afraid of being alone. You love without losing yourself. Buddhism teaches that this is true compassion, connection without attachment. It allows relationships to breathe, grow, or end naturally without causing inner collapse. Returning to yourself also simplifies your inner dialogue. The constant questioning fades. You no longer ask, "Why did they do this to me?" or "What does this mean about me?" Instead, your attention turns inward toward what is within your control, your actions, your responses, your awareness. Buddhism teaches that peace grows when energy is invested where it truly belongs. You stop wasting energy on mental battles you cannot win and invest it in inner cultivation. Over time, this inner return creates emotional resilience. Life still brings change, loss, and uncertainty, but your foundation remains steady. You are no longer easily shaken by opinions, silence, or behavior, not because you are indifferent, but because you are anchored. Buddhism teaches that an anchored mind remains calm even in changing conditions. This calm is not forced, it is natural. Becoming untouchable is not about protecting yourself from the world. It is about understanding yourself so deeply that the world no longer has the power to disturb your inner balance. When you return to yourself, you stop searching for safety outside. You realize it has always lived within you, quiet and patient, waiting for your attention. In Buddhism, this return is the path back to freedom. Not the freedom to control life, but the freedom to live within it without being bound by it. When you are rooted in yourself, you move through relationships, challenges, and changes with grace. You are present, aware, and at peace. And in this peace, you finally become untouchable, not by building walls, but by standing firmly in your own awareness. 10. Live in trust, not resistance. Buddhism teaches that much of human suffering comes from resistance to life as it is. We resist endings, we resist change, we resist people leaving, situations shifting, and plans falling apart. This resistance creates inner tension because the mind fights against a reality that has already unfolded. Living in trust does not mean life always goes your way. It means you stop arguing with what has already happened and learn to move forward without carrying bitterness, fear, or resentment in your heart. Resistance often feels like control. The mind believes that by holding on tightly, replaying events, or questioning everything, it can somehow fix the past or protect the future. Buddhism gently reveals that this is an illusion. Resistance does not protect you, it exhausts you. Each time you resist reality, you tighten your grip on suffering. Trust, on the other hand, relaxes the mind. It allows you to breathe again. It allows life to move without you standing in its way. Living in trust begins with accepting impermanence. Buddhism teaches that nothing in this world is meant to stay the same. Relationships change, people grow apart, roles dissolve. Even identities shift over time. When you expect permanence in an impermanent world, disappointment is inevitable. Trust grows when you stop demanding that life remains stable and instead learn to flow with its changes. You understand that what comes and goes is part of a larger rhythm you do not need to control. Trust also means believing that not everything that leaves your life is a loss. Some departures are protection, some endings are redirections. Buddhism teaches that wisdom often arrives disguised as disappointment. When you resist these moments, you miss their lesson. When you trust them, you begin to see that life is constantly guiding you away from what no longer serves your growth. This understanding brings a deep sense of calm, even in uncertain times. Resistance keeps you emotionally stuck. You may move forward physically, but your mind remains tied to the past. You keep asking why things happened the way they did. You replay conversations, analyze intentions, and search for meaning where there may be none. Buddhism teaches that peace does not come from answering every question. It comes from letting some questions remain unanswered. Trust allows you to release the need for complete understanding and rest in acceptance. Living in trust also changes how you relate to fear. Fear often arises when you imagine a future without familiar people or situations. The mind creates stories of loneliness, failure, or regret. Buddhism teaches that these stories are mental projections, not reality. When you return to the present moment, you see that you are still here, still breathing, still capable of meeting life as it unfolds. Trust anchors you in this present awareness, where fear loses much of its power. Trust does not mean passivity. It does not mean you stop making choices or setting boundaries. Buddhism teaches that wise action and trust go together. You act with awareness, honesty, and compassion, and then you release attachment to the outcome. You stop forcing life to match your expectations. You do your part and allow the rest to unfold naturally. This balance between action and surrender is the heart of Buddhist wisdom. As resistance fades, your inner world becomes more spacious. You no longer feel rushed to fix everything. You no longer feel pressured to hold everything together. You allow yourself to rest within uncertainty. Buddhism teaches that uncertainty is not the enemy, clinging is. When you trust life, uncertainty becomes a space of possibility rather than fear. Living in trust also softens your heart. When you stop resisting, you stop hardening yourself against pain. You remain open without being naive. You allow yourself to feel without being overwhelmed. Buddhism teaches that openness is strength, not weakness. A heart that trusts is flexible. It bends without breaking. It experiences pain without becoming bitter. Over time, trust becomes a quiet inner posture rather than a conscious effort. You respond to challenges with steadiness instead of panic. You accept change without collapsing. You let go without resentment. Life still presents difficulties, but they no longer define your inner state. Buddhism teaches that true peace is not found in a perfect life, but in a peaceful response to life as it is. Living in trust ultimately means trusting yourself, trusting your ability to adapt, to heal, and to grow. Trusting that even when things fall apart, you will not. This self-trust allows you to move forward without clinging to what is familiar or fearing what is unknown. You understand that you do not need certainty to be at peace. You need presence. In Buddhism, this is the final release. When resistance ends, suffering loosens its grip. When trust replaces control, peace settles naturally. You stop fighting life and begin walking with it. And in this gentle trust, you discover a freedom that does not depend on circumstances, people, or outcomes. It comes from within, steady and unshakable, guiding you quietly through whatever comes next. 11. Detach without becoming bitter and keep your heart soft. Buddhism teaches that detachment is not meant to harden the heart. One of the greatest misunderstandings about letting go is the belief that it requires emotional numbness, coldness, or indifference. Many people detach after being hurt, but they do so by closing their heart completely. This kind of detachment is not freedom. It is another form of protection built from pain. True detachment, as taught in Buddhism, allows you to step away from what harms you while keeping your heart open, gentle, and compassionate. Bitterness forms when pain is held without understanding. When you detach with anger, resentment quietly remains inside you. Even if you cut someone off physically, emotionally, they still occupy space within your mind. Buddhism teaches that unresolved resentment becomes a hidden burden. It may show itself as distrust, emotional distance, or difficulty connecting with others in the future. Detachment is meant to free you from suffering, not carry it forward in a different form. Detaching without bitterness begins with acknowledging your pain honestly. Buddhism does not ask you to deny, hurt, or pretend everything is fine. Suppressing pain only pushes it deeper into the mind. Instead, you gently recognize what you felt, how it affected you, and why it hurt. You allow the pain to be seen without judging yourself for having it. This honest awareness is the first step towards soft detachment. Keeping your heart soft means you do not turn your wounds into an identity. Many people unconsciously cling to their pain because it feels like proof of what they endured. Buddhism teaches that while your experience matters, you do not need to keep reliving it to honor it. You honor your pain by learning from it, not by carrying it everywhere you go. When you detach, you thank the experience for what it revealed and then release it gently. Detachment with softness also means understanding human imperfection. Buddhism teaches that people act from their level of awareness. Hurtful behavior often comes from ignorance, fear, or unresolved suffering. This understanding does not excuse harm, but it removes hatred from your heart. When you see others as conditioned beings rather than villains, detachment becomes lighter. You stop needing to label people as good or bad. You simply recognize what aligns with peace and what does not. A soft heart does not mean you allow mistreatment. Boundaries and compassion can exist together. Buddhism teaches that wisdom knows when to step back without hostility. You can say no without anger. You can leave without revenge. You can protect your energy without punishing others. This balance is the essence of mindful detachment. As you practice detaching without bitterness, you will notice a subtle shift within you. You stop replaying past events with emotional charge. The memories remain, but they no longer disturb your inner balance. Buddhism teaches that when understanding replaces resentment, the mind naturally settles. You are no longer fighting the past or resisting your emotions. You are at peace with what was and free to live in what is. Keeping your heart soft also allows love to continue flowing in your life. When bitterness takes root, it blocks future connection. You may withdraw emotionally or struggle to trust again. Buddhism teaches that love is not meant to be limited by past pain. A soft heart remains open to new experiences, new people, and new forms of connection without clinging or fear. Detachment does not close the door to love. It simply removes dependency from it. Soft detachment also brings humility. You recognize that at different moments in life, you too may have hurt others without intending to. This awareness dissolves the desire to judge or condemn. Buddhism teaches that compassion grows when we see ourselves in others. This compassion is not weakness, it is a sign of deep understanding and emotional maturity. As your heart softens, forgiveness may arise naturally, not forced forgiveness and not forgiveness given for others, but forgiveness that frees you from carrying resentment. Buddhism teaches that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It is the release of emotional debt. When forgiveness arises from understanding, it does not reopen old wounds. It closes them. Detaching without bitterness also strengthens your inner peace. You no longer carry emotional armor into every interaction. You remain present, calm, and grounded. Life still presents challenges, but you meet them without defensiveness. Buddhism teaches that a soft heart combined with clear awareness is unshakable. It allows you to move through the world without fear of being hurt again, because you trust your ability to respond wisely. Over time, this gentle detachment becomes your natural state. You let go without drama. You release without resentment. You walk away without carrying emotional weight. Your heart remains open, not because everyone deserves access to you, but because you no longer need to protect yourself through hardness. In Buddhism, this is a high form of freedom, to detach without bitterness, to keep your heart soft while protecting your peace, and to move forward without carrying past pain. This balance allows you to live lightly, love deeply, and remain free inside, regardless of what life brings your way. Detachment, as Buddhism teaches, is not an ending. It is a return to your breath, your awareness, and your natural state of peace. Throughout this journey, you have learned that detachment is not about cutting people off with anger, becoming cold, or closing your heart. It is about releasing emotional weight that was never meant to be carried forever. It is about understanding that your peace is too precious to be placed in the hands of other people's behavior, choices, or limitations. When you detach, you stop fighting life. You stop forcing understanding, chasing closure, and trying to control outcomes that are not yours to manage. You learn to step back quietly and allow the universe, karma, and time to do what they are meant to do. This trust does not make you weak, it makes you free, free from emotional exhaustion, free from resentment, free from constant mental noise. Buddhism reminds us that suffering decreases the moment we stop clinging. When you release attachment, expectations soften, reactions slow down, and the mind becomes lighter. You realize that peace was never something you had to earn from others. It was always within you, waiting for you to stop giving it away. Detachment simply clears the space so that peace can rise naturally. As you move forward, remember that detachment is a practice, not a one-time decision. Some days will be easier than others. Old emotions may return, and memories may resurface. This is not failure. It is part of the path. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, trust over resistance, and peace over emotional clutter, you strengthen your inner freedom. Let people walk their own paths. Let life unfold in its own time. Keep your heart soft, your boundaries clear, and your attention rooted in the present moment. Detach gently, without bitterness. Love without clinging. Care without losing yourself. In Buddhism, true peace is not found by changing the world around you, but by changing how tightly you hold on to it. When you finally learn to let go, you do not lose people, meaning, or love. You lose suffering, and in its place you gain clarity, calm, and a quiet confidence that nothing outside of you can easily disturb. Detach, trust, and return to yourself.